Hyun-Ki Park was having a normal morning run when the world around him stopped. The birds froze mid-flight. The leaves hung still in the air. Even the morning fog stopped moving. He knew something was wrong when he could still move while everything else stayed frozen. A bright blue light appeared above him. It was so bright that he had to cover his eyes. When he opened them again, he was not in the park anymore. He was in a white room with strange writing on the walls. "Human specimen captured," a voice said in perfect Korean. "Beginning evaluation process." Hyun-Ki's military training kicked in. He stayed calm and looked around for exits. There were none. The room was a perfect cube with smooth walls. His years in special forces had taught him how to handle strange situations, but this was different. "You are now property of the Galactic Confederation," the voice continued. "Your species has been classified as a Class 5 Deathworlder. You will be part of our containment testing program." Hyun-Ki laughed. It wasn't a happy laugh. "I'm nobody's property," he said. He touched the wall nearest to him. It was cold and felt like metal, but different from any metal he knew. 3 figures appeared in the room. They looked almost human, but their skin had a slight blue tint, and their eyes were too large. They wore white suits that seemed to flow like water. "This one is perfect," said the tallest alien. "Military background, peak physical condition, and high stress tolerance. The vault needs specimens like this." The second alien walked around Hyun-Ki, scanning him with a small device. "His bone density is remarkable, typical of Deathworlders. They evolved under crushing gravity." Hyun-Ki stayed quiet. He watched and listened. Every detail could be useful later. The aliens spoke Korean, but their mouths moved strangely, like the words were being translated somehow. The third alien, shorter than the others, seemed nervous. "We lost the last 4 human subjects in the vault. Are we sure about this one?" "That's exactly why we need him," the tall one said. "The vault must be tested against the strongest specimens. If it can't contain a human, it can't contain anything." Hyun-Ki thought about his team, about the missions they'd completed when everyone said they were impossible, about the times they'd survived when they should have died. These aliens didn't know what humans could do. "Begin preparation sequence," the tall alien ordered. A purple mist filled the room. Hyun-Ki held his breath, but it didn't matter. The mist went right through his skin. "Interesting," the scanning alien said. "His body is already adapting to the sedative. Deathworlders are fascinating. Their bodies fight against everything, even helpful medications." Hyun-Ki felt his muscles getting heavy, but his mind stayed sharp. He memorized their faces, their voices, the way they moved. Everything could be a weakness to exploit later. "Transport him to holding cell 17, the tall alien said. "Full security protocols. We don't want another incident like the last one." As Hyun-Ki's vision started to blur, he saw more aliens entering the room. They'd moved him onto a floating platform. The last thing he heard before everything went dark was the nervous alien speaking. "May the creators help us if this one survives the vault." Hyun-Ki's last thought before the darkness took him was simple. They weren't testing him. He was testing them, and he was going to show these aliens exactly why humans were called Deathworlders. He had survived worse, much worse, and he would survive this too. Hyun-Ki woke up in a glass cell. His head hurt, but his mind was clear. Through the glass, he saw a huge room filled with different cells. Some held creatures he had never seen before. Many cells were empty. A woman in a white coat walked up to his cell. She looked Korean, but something was off about her. Her movements were too smooth, almost like the aliens. "I am Chief Scientist Ji-Woo Lee," she said. Her voice was cold. "Welcome to the Eradication Vault." Hyun-Ki stood up slowly. "You're human," he said. It wasn't a question. "I was human," Ji-Woo corrected him. "Now I am improved. The Confederation showed me a better way." She tapped the glass with a metal pen. "This facility is my life's work. It will prove that even the most dangerous species can be contained. How many humans were here before me? Hyunki asked. He noticed small marks on the floor of his cell. Scratch marks. Someone had been counting days. Jiwoo smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. 4. They all failed the trials. Their bodies are being studied in Lab Section 6. She checked something on her tablet. You will last longer. Your physical scores are higher. Hyunki walked to the glass. Why are you helping them? We're your own people. People? Jiwoo laughed. Humans are dangerous animals. I've seen the data. Earth is a death trap that shaped us into monsters. The Confederation is right to contain us. A loud alarm started ringing. Red lights flashed. In a cell across the room, a huge creature with scales was trying to break its glass. The creature's cell filled with green gas. It fell to the floor, unconscious. Impressive, Hyunki said quietly. But you made a mistake. Jiwoo raised an eyebrow. Oh, you showed me how the containment system works. Hyunki touched the glass where the pen had tapped. There was a tiny scratch now. A weak point. Jiwoo's smile got wider. Clever. But this facility has killed things you couldn't imagine. Things that could eat you whole. Things that breathe fire and acid. She stepped closer to the glass. You'll break. They all do. You forgot something important about humans, Hyunki said. We don't just survive. We learn. Every failure makes us stronger. We'll see, Jiwoo said. She pressed something on her tablet. The floor of Hyunki's cell started to move. Your first trial begins now. Try not to die too quickly. The data from your death will be very useful. The cell started to sink into the floor. As it went down, Hyunki saw more levels of the vault. Each one was worse than the last. Chambers full of fire, rooms with spinning blades, pools of acid, and more cells, hundreds of them, most empty. One more thing. Jiwoo's voice came through a speaker. The last human lasted 6 days. Let's see if you can beat that record. The cell stopped in a dark room. Hyunki could hear things moving in the darkness. The glass door opened. Trial 1 begins in 10 seconds. A computer voice said. Subject will face standard elimination protocols. Hyunki closed his eyes. He thought about his training, about survival, about all the times humans had been underestimated. 5 seconds. He opened his eyes. In the darkness, red lights started to glow. Like eyes. Many eyes. Begin. The hunt was on. But these aliens would learn something important. On Earth, humans weren't always the prey. Sometimes, they were the predators. Hyunki's breath came out as steam in the freezing chamber. The temperature was dropping fast. He had already survived 3 days of tests, but this one was different. The cold bit through his clothes like tiny knives. -40 degrees, the computer announced. Subject shows no signs of system failure. In the control room above, Jiwoo watched with other scientists. Lower it more, she ordered. Humans can't handle extreme cold. Hyunki smiled. These aliens didn't know about Korean winters or about his mountain training. He had once spent a week in the snow with nothing but basic gear. This was cold, but not impossible. -60 degrees, the computer said. Hyunki kept moving. Standing still meant death. He did push-ups, jumped in place, anything to keep his blood flowing. His fingers hurt, but he had felt worse. Impossible, one alien scientist said. His core temperature is stable. Jiwoo frowned. Switch to heat. Maximum level. Now. The change was instant. The room became an oven. Hyunki's sweat turned to steam. But this too was familiar. Like the summer missions in the desert. Like the times his team had to move through active volcanoes. 50 degrees Celsius, the computer announced. Subject is adapting. Hyunki removed his outer shirt, using it to wipe sweat from his eyes. The metal floor burned his feet through his shoes. He remembered his training officer's words. Pain is just information. Use it. He's learning the patterns, Ji-woo said. She sounded angry. Activate the gravity controls. The pressure hit Hyun-ki like a truck. His legs shook as gravity increased. Walking became like moving through deep water. But Earth's gravity had made humans strong. His bones didn't break. His muscles strained but held. 3 times normal gravity. The computer said. Subject remains conscious. Hyun-ki took one heavy step, then another. Each movement was a battle. But battles were what humans did best. He reached the water dispenser in the corner. Every step a victory against the crushing force. Fine. Ji-woo snapped. Released the toxins. Green gas filled the room. Hyun-ki's throat burned. His eyes watered. But he smiled again. The gas smelled like the chemical weapons his team had trained against. He controlled his breathing, just like in training. How? Ji-woo demanded. The gas should have knocked him out. Deathworlders, another scientist said with respect. Their bodies are poison factories. They eat foods that would kill us. They breathe air that would choke us. This one is special. Hour after hour, the trials continued. They tried sound weapons, but Earth's thunderstorms were louder. They tried light weapons, but Hyun-ki had trained for flash grenades. They tried darkness, but night operations were his specialty. When the day ended, Hyun-ki sat in his cell, tired but alive. He had learned much. Each trial showed him more about how the vault worked. Each failure of theirs taught him something new. 7 days, Ji-woo's voice came through the speaker. You've survived 7 days. A new record. She paused. Tomorrow will be worse. Looking forward to it, Hyun-ki said. He lay down on his bed, muscles aching but spirit unbroken. In his mind, he was already planning. The vault was strong, but it had weaknesses. And if there was one thing humans were good at, it was finding weaknesses. Tomorrow would be worse. But tomorrow, he would be stronger. Ha-won Kim sat in her observation pod, watching the screens with growing interest. As lead observer for the vault, she had seen many species face the trials. But this human was different. Recording day 15 of human subject observation, she spoke into her data recorder. Subject continues to display unusual learning patterns. On the main screen, Hyun-ki was facing today's challenge, a maze filled with deadly traps. He moved carefully, marking the walls with small scratches. Ha-won noticed he used the same pattern she had seen him use in earlier trials. The subject creates maps, she noted, not just mental ones, but physical markers. Each trial's experience is used to prepare for the next. She leaned closer to the screen. This suggests higher thinking, not just survival instinct. A blast of plasma shot from the maze wall. Hyun-ki rolled forward, using the momentum to dodge 2 more blasts. His movements were smooth, practiced. He had learned the timing of the weapons. Remarkable, Ha-won whispered. She typed quickly on her tablet. Subject demonstrates pattern recognition beyond previous specimens. Question: are all humans this adaptable, or is this one special? In another screen, she watched recordings from his cell at night. While other specimens slept, Hyun-ki exercised. He used the cell's limited space to stay strong. He practiced movements she had seen him use in the trials. This changes everything we thought about Deathworlders, she said. They don't just survive. They prepare. They improve. An alert flashed on her screen. Ji-woo was coming to check her reports. Ha-won quickly switched her displays to standard observation formats. But she kept one small screen showing Hyun-ki. Observer Kim, Ji-woo said as she entered. Your reports are becoming concerning. You seem too interested in the subject. Ha-won kept her face calm. I observe. That is my job. This specimen shows unusual traits. Should I not study them? Remember, Ji-woo said coldly, humans are dangerous. That's why we built the vault. Don't let their appearance fool you. They're not like us. After Ji-woo left, Ha-Won looked back at her hidden screen. Hyun-Ki was now sitting quietly, his eyes closed. But she saw his fingers moving slightly, counting something. "No," she said quietly. "They're not like us. They might be better." She started a new recording, this one encrypted so only she could access it. The Confederation's assessment of humans may be wrong. Evidence suggests they are not simply dangerous animals, but highly intelligent beings capable of. She stopped as she saw something new. Hyun-Ki had opened his eyes and was looking directly at her hidden camera. He smiled and gave a small nod. "They're more aware than we thought," Ha-Won added to her secret recording. "And I'm no longer sure we're the ones doing the testing." In his cell, Hyun-Ki went back to his exercises. But now Ha-Won understood. He wasn't just trying to survive. He was preparing for something bigger. And for the first time since joining the vault, she wondered if she was on the wrong side. Day 30 in the vault. Ji-Woo stood before the control panel, her hands shaking with anger. Nothing had worked. Not the extreme tests, not the deadly traps, not even the psychological warfare. "Release the nanites," she ordered. "Full swarm." Silver dust filled Hyun-Ki's testing chamber. The nanites were microscopic robots that could tear anything apart. They had never failed before. Hyun-Ki watched the silver cloud approach. He had seen these before, in a different chamber, had watched how they destroyed other test subjects. But he had also seen something else, how the nanites avoided water. He broke the water pipe he had loosened earlier. Steam filled the room. The nanites became confused, their sensors blocked by the moisture. Hyun-Ki used his wet shirt as a shield, moving through the cloud safely. "Impossible." Ji-Woo slammed her fist on the panel. "Deploy the antimatter pulse." Purple energy crackled through the chamber. This was their strongest weapon, a burst of pure antimatter that should destroy anything it touched. But Hyun-Ki had studied the pulse generators, had seen the pattern in their placement. He ran in a specific path, timing his movements perfectly. Each pulse missed him by inches. The energy that should have killed him instead destroyed the remaining nanites. "He's learning too much," one scientist warned. "He knows how our systems work now." In his chamber, Hyun-Ki smiled. He hadn't just learned their systems. He had mastered them. Each trial had taught him more about the vault's weaknesses. "Then we break his mind," Ji-Woo said. She pressed a red button. "Start the psychological attack." The chamber walls became screens. They showed images of Earth being destroyed, of his family in pain, of his worst fears come to life. The sounds were designed to drive him insane. But Hyun-Ki sat down calmly. He had faced real horrors in his military days. These fake images couldn't touch him. Instead, he used the time to rest, to plan. "Why isn't it working?" Ji-Woo screamed. "Nothing works on him." "Because you don't understand humans," Ha-Won's voice came from the observation pod. "Everything you throw at him makes him stronger. That's what humans do. They adapt. They overcome." Hyun-Ki stood up as the images faded. He looked directly at the observation window and spoke clearly. "Thank you for the training." The words sent chills through the control room. They weren't the words of a test subject. They were the words of someone who had turned the tables. "Shut down all tests," Ji-Woo ordered. "Return him to his cell." But as they watched Hyun-Ki walk calmly back to his cell, everyone in the control room felt the same thing. Fear. They had tried to break him, and instead, he had learned to break their perfect vault. The real test was about to begin. And this time, Hyun-Ki would be the one running it. Ji-Woo couldn't sleep. For the first time in years, her dreams were filled with memories of Earth, of her family, of who she used to be before the Confederation changed her. She watched the security feed of Hyun-Ki's cell. He was doing push-ups like every night. His strength hadn't dropped even after 40 days of trials. "Why can't I break you?" she whispered. Her tablet beeped. A message from Ha-Won. "Need to show you something. Important. Meet me in Archive Room 7. In the dark archive room, HFY was surrounded by holographic displays. Files, reports, and test results floated in the air. "Look at this," HFY said. She pointed to a document. "The original classification of humans is Deathworlders. It's based on wrong data." Jiwoo read the file. Something cold formed in her stomach. "This can't be right." "The Confederation lied," HFY said. "They didn't classify humans as dangerous because we're violent. They did it because we're adaptable, because we learn too fast, because we could become stronger than them." More files appeared, secret reports, hidden studies, the truth about why the Confederation really built the vault. "They're not trying to protect the galaxy from us," HFY said. "They're afraid of us, of what we could become." Jiwoo touched a screen showing Earth. Her hands shook. "I helped them. I helped them hurt my own people." "It's not too late," HFY said. She showed another file. "More humans are being brought to other vaults. They're planning to test all Earth species, to find our weaknesses, to control us." In his cell, Hyun-Ki stopped exercising. He looked up at the camera and spoke. "You know I can hear you, right? The vault's sound system works both ways. I've known for days." Jiwoo and HFY froze. "You're right," Hyun-Ki continued. "They fear us. But not just humans. Every species in here that's labeled dangerous is really just strong enough to challenge them." Alarms suddenly blared. Red lights flashed. On every screen, warnings appeared. "Warning. Multiple containment breaches detected." "Warning. System compromise detected." "What's happening?" Jiwoo asked. HFY checked her tablet. Her eyes went wide. "The other specimens, they're all escaping. At the same time." "But how?" "I taught them." Hyun-Ki's voice came through every speaker. "Every night, while you thought I was just exercising, I was teaching them. Through the pipes, through the vibrations in the walls. Everything I learned about the vault, I shared." Jiwoo realized the truth. They hadn't been testing him. He had been testing the vault, learning its every secret. And now, "It's time to choose," Hyun-Ki said. "Help us end this, or stay with the ones who turned you against your own kind." Jiwoo looked at her modified hands, at the changes the Confederation had made to her. Then she looked at the truth in front of her. She made her choice. Chaos erupted in the vault. Alarms screamed as hundreds of containment cells opened at once. Creatures of all shapes and sizes poured into the corridors, following the escape plan Hyun-Ki had taught them. Security teams to all levels. The command center's voice boomed. "Stop the specimens at any cost." Hyun-Ki ran through the chaos, helping other test subjects. A giant crystal being blocked security robots with its body. Floating gas creatures confused the vault's sensors. Each species used the strengths Hyun-Ki had helped them discover. The human showed us the way. A telepathic creature broadcasted to all others. "Together, we are stronger than their walls." Jiwoo and HFY worked at control panels, shutting down security systems. Their knowledge of the vault, combined with Hyun-Ki's planning, made the perfect team. "The antimatter containment is still holding," Jiwoo said. "But they're sending in elite guards." Hyun-Ki helped a wounded fire breather stand up. "Get everyone to the ship bays, just like we practiced." Through the pipes and walls, a deep drumming sound echoed. It was the code Hyun-Ki had taught them. Different species took up the rhythm, passing messages through the vault, warning others of dangers, sharing safe paths. "How did you teach them all to work together?" HFY asked as she disabled another security grid. "Everyone in here was labeled dangerous because they were smart," Hyun-Ki said. "They just needed someone to show them they weren't alone." A squad of guards appeared, wearing powered armor. They raised their weapons, but stopped in shock. Behind Hyun-Ki stood creatures from 100 worlds, all working as one. "Stand down," Hyun-Ki told the guards. "You've lost." More alarms blared. The main screen showed escaped specimens taking control of Confederation ships in the bays. Species that were supposed to hate each other were helping each other escape. The vault's containment systems are failing, Jiwoo reported. Too many specimens are using their abilities at once. Hyun-Ki nodded. This was part of the plan too. The vault couldn't handle all its prisoners working together. It was built to contain them fighting alone. To all specimens, his voice echoed through the speakers. Remember what I taught you. Follow the escape plan. Help each other. Today, we proved them wrong about all of us. The guards dropped their weapons. They had never seen anything like this. Creatures that should be killing each other were instead protecting each other. Why? One guard asked. Why help other species? Because that's what humans do, Hyun-Ki said. We learn. We teach. We bring people together. He looked at the guard. Your leaders called us dangerous because we show others how to be free. The vault shook as more systems failed, but Hyun-Ki smiled. Everything was going exactly as planned. The Confederation had tried to break him, but instead he had built an army. An army of the ones they called dangerous. An army of the ones they tried to cage. The uprising had begun. Red warning lights filled every screen in the vault's control center. The antimatter containment system was failing. If it broke, the explosion would destroy everything for light years around. We have 10 minutes, Jiwoo said, her fingers flying over the controls. The system is overloading. Too many specimens used their powers at once. Hyun-Ki watched the escape ships launching. Most of the test subjects were safe now, but the vault itself was becoming a bomb. Can we shut it down? Ha-Won asked. No, Jiwoo said, but I can redirect the blast. Make it collapse inward. She looked at her hands. The Confederation changed my body, made me part machine. I can connect to the core. You'll die, Hyun-Ki said. Good. Jiwoo smiled sadly. Time I did something human again. Alarms screamed louder. The walls shook. In the lower levels, antimatter containment was already breaking. Everyone out. Hyun-Ki ordered through the speakers. Get to the last ships. Now. Jiwoo walked to the core access panel. Her modified hands opened, revealing connection ports. Ha-Won, get him out of here. He's too important. The others will need him. Ha-Won grabbed Hyun-Ki's arm. She's right. The escaped specimens trust you. They'll need a leader. The Confederation will come after us, Hyun-Ki said. Let them come, Jiwoo said as she connected herself to the core. You've proven something important. When species work together, we're stronger than any cage they can build. The vault groaned. Metal twisted. The antimatter containment was almost gone. 5 minutes, Jiwoo said. Her eyes glowed with power as she merged with the vault systems. I can feel it. So much energy. I'll make it implode. Turn their weapon into nothing. Hyun-Ki took one last look at her. You remembered who you were. No, Jiwoo said. You reminded me. Her body started to shine with antimatter energy. Now go. Show them what humans can really do. Ha-Won pulled Hyun-Ki to the last ship. Through the viewing window, they watched the vault begin to collapse. It folded in on itself, pulled by Jiwoo's sacrifice. The greatest prison ever built was becoming a tiny point of light. Goodbye, Hyun-Ki whispered as their ship jumped to safety. Behind them, the vault vanished. Not in an explosion that destroyed everything, but in an implosion that destroyed only itself. Jiwoo's final gift. The test subjects were free. The army of the unwanted was loose in the galaxy. And the Confederation was about to learn why caging people only makes them stronger. 3 months after the vault's destruction, Hyun-Ki stood before the Galactic Council. Behind him were representatives of every species that had escaped. They called themselves the Free Alliance now. You ask why we're here, Hyun-Ki said to the council. We're here because you need to understand what you did wrong. The council chamber was silent. Through the windows, thousands of ships could be seen. Vessels stolen from other vaults that the escaped specimens had helped liberate. You classified us as dangerous, Hyun-Ki continued. You built prisons to contain us, but you never asked why we were strong. You never wondered what made us survive. Ha-1 stepped forward with data files. Every species you labeled as a threat had one thing in common. They helped others survive. They shared knowledge. They worked together. Images appeared on the council's screens, escaped specimens teaching each other, helping weaker species grow stronger, building a community of the unwanted. Humans didn't just escape your vault, Hyun-Ki said. We showed everyone else how to escape too. Because that's what you really feared. Not our strength, but our ability to make others strong. A council member stood up. You're proving our point. You're dangerous. No, Hyun-Ki smiled. We're teachers. Every species you caged had something to teach. The Fire Brothers taught survival. The Crystal Beings taught protection. The Gas Creatures taught freedom. More images appeared. Freed specimens returning to their worlds, teaching others what they had learned. The revolution wasn't fought with weapons, but with knowledge. Ji-Woo died to save us, Hyun-Ki said. She remembered what being human really meant. Not being perfect, not being safe, but being willing to help others, even if it costs us everything. The council chamber doors opened. More freed specimens entered. Species that were supposed to be enemies now stood together as friends. Here's your choice, Hyun-Ki said. Keep fighting us, and we'll keep freeing others. Or accept that the galaxy is changing. That working together makes us all stronger. Ha-1 showed the final data. Half your vaults are empty now. Their specimens didn't escape. We freed them, and they joined us. The council looked at the army of former prisoners, at the fleet of liberated ships, at the proof that their perfect system of control had become a perfect system of rebellion. The age of cages is over, Hyun-Ki said. The age of learning begins. And so the galaxy changed, not through war or violence, but through teaching, through sharing, through the simple human idea that helping others makes everyone stronger. The Confederation learned what Earth had always known. Trying to cage something only teaches it to be free.